Hello everybody, I'm Dan Murrell here with my first update video with the latest news coming out of CinemaCon, which is happening this week in Las Vegas. Now, if you don't know what CinemaCon is, it's an annual convention that's put on by Cinema United, who recently renamed themselves. Their previous name was the National Association of Theater Owners, or NATO. So I guess it's pretty obvious why they went with the name change. And what it really is a trade show for all of the movie theater owners to gather together, but all of the major studios also show up to promote their upcoming theatrical slates, and it can often be a source of a lot of movie news and stuff that we didn't know. So 2 days are in the books for this year's CinemaCon, and I've got a lot of the updates from the major studio presentations we've seen so far. But before we dive into that, I wanted to talk for a couple minutes about something that broke as I was preparing this show last night, which is the death of Val Kilmer, who I think was one of the most talented actors of his generation. When I was a kid, even though I'd seen Willow, he really first hit my radar when he played Batman in Batman Forever. 12-year-old me loved that movie, and 42-year-old me still has a soft spot in my heart for it. I discovered him through my teen years in movies like Top Gun and also Top Secret, which I think is still an immensely underrated spoof movie, and then in Tombstone, which is still my favorite performance of his, playing Doc Holliday to Kurt Russell's Wyatt Earp. Tombstone remains one of my favorite westerns, maybe my favorite, in no small part because of Kilmer's performance.
Why, Johnny Ringo, you look like somebody just walked over your grave.
As I entered college and went into my 20s, I began to appreciate Kilmer's performances in older movies like The Doors and Heat, while he still produced great work in movies including The Salton Sea, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and as the villain Dieter von Kuntz in MacGruber. His last film role was a brief return to his role as Iceman in Top Gun Maverick.
Who's the better pilot, you or me?
This is a nice moment. Let's not ruin it.
Val Kilmer had a reputation for being a very serious actor and, according to some people, a little difficult to work with, but I think that what he leaves behind is a sprawling filmography that touches almost every genre you could possibly imagine. And if you haven't seen the 2021 documentary Val, where his own words are voiced by his son Jack Kilmer, it's a great portrait of who he was as an artist and as a person. I think you should seek that out. After a struggle with cancer over the past decade, Val Kilmer died in Los Angeles of pneumonia and will be sorely missed by his friends, family, and fans.
Live every second. Live right up the hill. Live wide. Live for me.
So let's dive into what we've gotten from CinemaCon so far this year, and we will start with the very first studio presentation, which happened back on Monday from Sony. They have a lot of stuff coming up, and they previewed actually a pretty big volume of different movies. Danny Boyle previewed a new trailer for 28 Years Later, which opens in June, and also brought out Nia DaCosta, the director of 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple, which is set to open in January. Boyle also said that he's still seeking financing to make the third film in his planned trilogy, and that franchise star Cillian Murphy will return, but he did not say where or when. Sony also debuted a new trailer for Karate Kid Legends, which opens on May 30th. The trailer was released publicly shortly thereafter. Jackie Chan's Kung Fu Master from the remake teams up with Ralph Macchio's karate legend from the original to train a new Karate Kid, this time in New York City, all leading up to, of course, a big tournament. Director Sam Mendes hit the stage to officially confirm the cast for his planned 4-film Beatles project. Harris Dickinson will be John Lennon, Paul Mescal is Paul McCartney, Barry Keoghan is Ringo Starr, and Joseph Quinn is George Harrison. Surprisingly, all 4 movies are also scheduled to hit theaters in April 2028 in what Sony chairman Tom Rothman called, quote, the first bingeable theatrical experience. So that is a lot of Beatles hitting theaters in about 3 years. Darren Aronofsky previewed his new film Caught Stealing, which has a release date of August 29th. It stars Austin Butler as a baseball player who finds himself entering a world of crime in 1990s New York. The cast also includes Regina King, Matt Smith, Zoe Kravitz, Bad Bunny, Vincent D'Onofrio, and Liev Schreiber. Zach Kreger, who directed Barbarian, briefly plugged his upcoming Resident Evil movie, which is currently scheduled for September 18th, 2026. The Hollywood rumor mill says that Mikey Madison was offered a lead role, but there's been no confirmation of that. Austin Abrams has already been announced as a lead in the film, which is expected to be pretty much a reboot of the film series. Kogonada Takahata, who directed the film After Yang, also debuted a first look at his new movie called A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey, which stars Colin Farrell and Margot Robbie. And apparently it is a romantic movie with a bit of a sci-fi time travel twist. It sounds pretty interesting. I'll be looking out for that one. There was also a poster reveal for Goat, a new animated film produced by Stephen Curry about an actual goat who wants to go all pro in basketball. It's scheduled to open on February 13th, 2026. The Legacy remake of I Know What You Did Last Summer, which opens on July 18th, premiered footage that featured returning cast members from the original film. There was also some news on movies a little further down the pipeline. A live-action Legend of Zelda movie is on the release calendar for March 26, 2027, and a fourth Jumanji movie, and the third, with the new cast, has been dated for December 11th, 2026, sticking to the release window that worked well for the previous two films. Of course, Spider-Man is Sony's crown jewel, and we got a couple of big announcements at their CinemaCon panel. Director Destin Daniel Cretton and star Tom Holland via video announced the title for the next live-action Spider-Man film, Spider-Man Brand New Day, hitting theaters on July 31st, 2026, which currently is only 2 weeks after Tom Holland is scheduled to hit the screen as part of Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. The new live-action Spider-Man film will be once again a co-production between Sony and Marvel Studios. Perhaps the biggest piece of news was a new announced date for Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse. It was originally scheduled to hit theaters in March 2024, less than a year after Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, but is now scheduled to open on June 4th, 2027, more than 3 years after its original release date. The filmmakers indicated they wanted to take this extra time to get the animation right and to continue to break new barriers. Yesterday, the day started off with a presentation from Lionsgate, and if you were going to sum up the strategy of Lionsgate for the next few years in one word, I think that word would be franchise. First, the studio previewed some footage of the John Wick spin-off film Ballerina starring Ana de Armas, which hits theaters on June 6th, but they also announced a whole raft of John Wick-related projects, including an animated prequel movie with Keanu Reeves voicing John Wick, detailing how he initially walked away from being an assassin, as well as a spin-off film about Donnie Yen's character Kane from John Wick Chapter 4, which is scheduled to be directed by Donnie Yen. And most notably, Lionsgate announced that development has begun on a fifth John Wick movie with Keanu Reeves attached to return as John Wick. Honestly, I don't know how they're going to be able to do this unless the franchise literally becomes supernatural in nature. I'm a huge fan of the John Wick movies, and even I am not sure that a fifth installment is needed or could even plausibly be done. But John Wick is one of the few franchises that Lionsgate has, and it seems very obvious that their plan is to milk it for all it's worth. Lionsgate also previewed footage from the third Now You See Me film and announced the title, which is Now You See Me, Now You Don't, which is a nice try, but it's way too late. The time for that pun was for the second movie to be called Now You Don't, and I'm not giving you retroactive credit for naming the third film Now You See Me, Now You Don't. Good try, though. Another new Hunger Games movie was also announced, Sunrise on the Reaping, which is based on the latest Hunger Games novel that was just published back in March, is another prequel that tells the story of the 50th Hunger Games and its main competitor, Haymitch Abernathy, who was of course played as an adult by Woody Harrelson in the Katniss Everdeen films. Francis Lawrence is returning to direct, and the movie is set to begin filming this summer. As far as non-sequels go, Lionsgate hyped up The Long Walk, a Stephen King adaptation, also directed by Francis Lawrence, starring Mark Hamill and Alien Romulus' David Johnson, in a contest to see who can literally be the last person either walking or dead. Nick Jonas and Paul Rudd will appear in a movie together later this year called Power Ballad, about a musician played by Nick Jonas who steals a song that's written by Paul Rudd and Rudd's quest for revenge. The Housemaid, which is set to open on Christmas Day, debuted a trailer at CinemaCon. The movie stars Sydney Sweeney as a maid who takes a job working for Amanda Seyfried and Brandon Sklenar, only to find out that she's in for way more than she bargained for. Paul Feig is the director on this movie. And there was also a new trailer for Hurry Up Tomorrow, which is scheduled for May 16th, starring The Weeknd, Jenna Ortega, and Barry Keoghan. I'm still not really sure what this movie's about, but it appears that Ortega plays some kind of obsessed fan who gets a little too close for comfort to The Weeknd. The final panel yesterday was from Warner Brothers, and it was one of the most anticipated panels of the convention because there are so many big projects that we don't know much about. Would there be major announcements around Dune Messiah, or Supergirl, or the Batman Part 2, or the Lord of the Rings Gollum spin-off movie? It seemed like this was a perfect place to announce stuff about those movies, but we actually didn't hear anything about any of them. Warner Brothers instead stuck a lot closer to their more immediate film slate. Leonardo DiCaprio, Tiana Taylor, and Regina Hall showed up to hype up Paul Thomas Anderson's One Battle After Another with some extended footage for the audience in attendance. That movie is scheduled to open on September 26th. Maggie Gyllenhaal also debuted a short trailer for her film The Bride, starring Jessie Buckley and inspired by The Bride of Frankenstein. This is a big budget movie shot in IMAX and was recently pushed to May 6, 2026 by Warner Brothers. The Conjuring Last Rites was confirmed for its September 5th release date and hyped as the final Conjuring film. I'll believe that when I see it. There was also an extended preview of Final Destination Bloodlines, which opens on May 16th. From the descriptions of the footage that I read, it does sound very Final Destination-y, meaning it's still a franchise about people dying in overly elaborate, horrible, and creative ways. Zach Cregger returned to the stage for a second day to promote Weapons, his next film, which opens on August 8th and stars Josh Brolin, Julia Garner, Alden Ehrenreich, and Benedict Wong. It sounds like some buzz might be starting to build around this movie. It could be one to watch. Director Joseph Kosinski premiered the first 10 minutes of F1, which opens on June 27th. Brad Pitt stars as a washed-up NASCAR driver coaching a young F1 driver in this very pricey Formula One movie that's a co-production with Apple and aiming to grab the Top Gun Maverick premium format crowd. Warner Brothers Animation brought out Bill Hader to hype up The Cat in the Hat. Hader will provide the voice of the main character, and Warner says that it's aiming to create a whole Dr. Seuss animated franchise off the back of this first movie. And finally, James Gunn, Peter Safran, David Corenswet, Rachel Brosnahan, and Nicholas Hoult took the stage to hype Superman, which is shaping up to be both one of the biggest movies of the summer and an incredibly important one for Warner Brothers. They premiered some footage which may or may not be the extended preview that will be attached to a Minecraft movie this weekend. And that was all Warner Brothers had to offer at their panel. Now, it's important to remember that CinemaCon is not Comic-Con. There's not exactly an expectation that the studio is going to make major announcements for some of their big franchise movies. But even given that, it was a little surprising to me that there wasn't anything deeper as far as the DC films go, or even a hint of information about Dune Messiah or the upcoming Lord of the Rings projects. But who knows? Warner Brothers may have plans to announce those at a different venue later in the year. Strangely, one of the biggest pieces of movie news that came out yesterday wasn't from CinemaCon at all, and that's probably because it involves Netflix, which to many of the CinemaCon attendees is public enemy number one. The Playlist broke news that a follow-up to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, written by Quentin Tarantino and directed by David Fincher, is happening and is hoping to shoot this summer. It features Brad Pitt's character from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Cliff Booth, and an appearance from Leonardo DiCaprio as Rick Dalton is reportedly possible but not locked in as of yet. This is not an April Fool's joke. Multiple outlets have now picked this up and confirmed that it is for real. Apparently, the project started out as the script for The Movie Critic, a project that Quentin Tarantino shelved not too long ago, but I guess that script did feature Cliff Booth. Brad Pitt liked the script and asked Tarantino if he would allow the movie to be made by another director. Tarantino said that it depended on who the director would be, and it turns out that David Fincher passed muster. Now, should this movie actually happen, it would be one of the most anticipated movies in a long time, especially amongst the Letterboxd Criterion Collection crowd. I would count myself as part of that crowd, by the way. But it also seems a little bit too good to be true. So we're just going to have to wait and see if this actually happens. So that's all the news we have so far out of CinemaCon. There are two presentations today. Universal will be presenting their slate at 6:45 p.m. Eastern Time tonight, and Amazon MGM will be taking a late night slot at 11:15 p.m. Eastern Time tonight. And then on Friday, Paramount will make their presentation at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with Disney closing everything out, presenting at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I'd hoped to be covering this in person. I wasn't able to do it this year, but I will be right here with my eyes glued to the computer screen, looking at all the updates that are coming in from the convention, and I'll bring you my takes on everything that's announced in 1 or 2 more videos right here this week. Also, stay tuned because I'm going to be reviewing a Minecraft movie and keeping my ear to the ground for more movie news as well as box office and everything else I do here on the channel. Thank you so much for watching my first CinemaCon update. Stay tuned for more, and until next time, stay safe. Bye.